classes with her. And yeah, she was teaching figure drawing out of Stewart Creek.
Spring Creek.
Spring Creek.
Right. I had a studio there
yeah.
when I first met you, and you came with Carol.
I came with Carol. Yeah, it
Right.
was before I actually moved down here. And so anyway, yeah, that's how we met originally.
Did you feel an alignment, or do you need to feel an alignment to make that connection of shared studio space?
Well, it was interesting because I was a little bit aware of, I took a printmaking class with Jen as well. So we each had taken each other's classes, which was really fun.
Yeah.
And a little bit, you know, it gives you some insight into how somebody works,
yep,
and how they think. And so when I moved into the studio, we had conversations about, you know, the education that we'd had and the work that we were doing and about abstraction. And we both sort of said, well, you know, I said, I don't think I'm going to paint mountains this year. And she said, I'm not painting mountains this year. And so we embarked upon this long, lengthy discussion about abstraction. And that's where both of our work is situated.
And actually, like a lot of the things that I like about the mountains is kind of the more micro scale of things. So the finer details and the patterns that show up in rocks and those kinds of unexpected things. And sometimes I kind of pull from those textures and patterns and use those in my work.
You're leading through to a million other questions that are going to come up again later, which is good. Jen, you were a printmaker first. Give us a brief background of the artistic path, where you've been.
Well, I started in Fort McMurray, and actually I started with Carol taking some classes up in piano college in Fort McMurray.
Really?
Yeah. We used to drive to the studio together and eat chocolate bars at break together. That would surprise no one. Anyway, and I had such a fabulous printmaking instructor there. Her name was Robin, and she was just so fantastic. And she was the one that sort of got me into printmaking, and I really love process, and I love things that are not they don't show themselves right away, so it sort of gets revealed through the process, and that's what I like about printmaking.
So now, Wanda, you were sculpture first.
Yes.
Give us the overview of how you arrived into abstract painting.
I think, Cheryl, I really do think this started, I've always loved abstract painting. I mean, all through my education and teaching, I was always taken with abstract art and the history of it, and just kind of what it could possibly be used for as a way of expression. And so I'd had this kind of inclination, even when I was a sculptor. My sculpture was not necessarily abstract, but it wasn't representational either.
Right.
So there was this whole abstraction kind of aesthetic happening through my work, whether it was 3D or 2D. How I got to this, though, was interesting. It started with starting to teach, believe it or not, figure drawing again in 2011. That was the year my mom passed away, and it was like, okay, now you've got the first day for the rest of your life. What are you going to do? And I was so interested in teaching, and I actually taught upstairs at that space that you had in the building,
long time ago. Yes,
long time, 2011. So then slowly it started to become more and more of a thing that I wanted to do, as well as the 3D, and I kept drawing. And when I had the opportunity to actually start to paint again, it was what's the word, terrifying, but exhilarating at the same time. And I don't know if education helped me at all at that point, because knowing all the stuff you know doesn't necessarily help you do what you want to do, right?
It surely doesn't inform the language that you've chosen. It's completely, and it's technical, but the intuition matters. Jen, what does baking beautiful things do for your art practice? Because you it's become almost part of your art practice to see the baking constantly showing up on Instagram.
Yeah. well, I really love sugar. And I don't know, I just really, I think again, it's the love of process. And so I like to push things to even in a more complicated way to like, you know, I bought a chocolate tempering machine and I like to like, you know, make all the inside fillings of my chocolates and like, you know, the ones that take 2 weeks to actually set, you know, where you have to have a special enzyme that will make like fondant go from hard to soft.
See, I totally don't know any of that. That's brilliant.
Anyway, I'm process, and that's why I like doing all that stuff.
Wanda, does Jen bring all of that baking to the studio?
Well, you know, this is really funny because I love her baking, but this is where we really do. I don't love sugar. And so we always have this discussion about, I say things like, oh, how can you eat that? And she says, how can you not? So, but yes, she does share. It's true.
So how difficult, and this is the difficult side, there's going to be positive ones, but how difficult is it to share creative space? This is a both person question.
I don't know. I don't think it's difficult. Like the studio runs really well. Like in terms of Wanda and I, our space is very shared.
Yeah.
Like I have kind of my little area and she has her little area, and it's like, hey, I'm out of titanium white. You have that? Yep. Oh, I'm at a medium. You have that? Yep. And it's a lot of kind of back and forth. And so
well,
I think
it's in the same visual space, which I find interesting. That's you know, it's not like there's any blocking between you. No. So I'm interested in that part.
Well, I think that for us, we're terribly interested in each other's work and what each other are doing at any given moment. And also, and this was something that we talked about early on, is it's the mind of the other artist that's really fascinating. Mm-hmm. And Jen once said that to me. She said, well, you know, it's really great to have somebody who's interested in ideas and interested in talking about and sharing ideas about that. And we share openly, like across the board, ideas, thoughts, criticism goes back and forth.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, Wanda, is this shit? And she's like, yeah, it's shit. And then
well, that's part of the question as you go along too, because it's like, where did that constant critique in a studio it's both challenging and brilliant at the same time. Jen, where did you grow up and how did you end up here in Canmore?
I grew up in a little town called Bloomfield Ridge, New Brunswick. Oh. And it's right smack in the middle of New Brunswick. And I met my husband at university in Fredericton, and he actually worked at a pulp mill that abruptly closed down. So he was out of work, and for about 8 months he was searching for work, and we ended up in Fort McMurray. And we were really sad about leaving our family back east to move to Fort McMurray, which was so far away. But I actually have an aunt in Fort McMurray. And at the time, my brother was also in Fort McMurray and my father. And so I did have family there. And then I met wonderful friends and went to art school there. And the
rest is history.
The rest is history. From there, we came down to Canmore, Calgary, because I wanted to go to ACAD, and like I wanted to actually get a degree because it was just a diploma program in Fort McMurray. And so my husband got a transfer and we came down and we made Canmore our home. So we had to commute to Calgary, and he still has to commute to Calgary. Well, not right at the moment, but yeah, that's how I ended here.
You had just told me a brief one. I wanted to actually repeat the circuitous route to get you here. This is a to both question, and I'm trying to do this very advertently, mix you up between artistic questions and personal ones. To you both now, is your current work more influenced by place or by time?
Oh.
By the time we are in or by place? It's hard question.
I think for me, it's both, because it is place, but it's kind of like the memory of place that I'm recovering all the time. So it is time related, but it's definitely got a strong sense of place in it, like referencing nature and being outside and different aspects of climate. So for me, it's kind of both.
And I feel like for me, it's kind of more time related, because like, especially in my titles, I try to name my pieces that are more related to, you know, a moment that a lot of people would have had like at some point in their own time. And
Right.
so when I title it that title, I think it will let people harken back to those own memories that they would share of that time.
I was struck by that part of your of the work and how it's titled. So it's great to know exactly. Wanda, you've had a tough year, a painter with a bum shoulder. Give us some insight into how you've managed to keep painting.
Well, that was at first I was dismayed when I did the Gushel artist residency, and my shoulder had been injured at that point, but it wasn't serious. So February went by quite wonderfully with not too much injury, but I got back to the studio, and with this body of work I was trying to finish, and Jen was there that day, thank goodness. And I reached out to grab my iPad, which was falling off the table, and I absolutely tore the tendon right off my shoulder. So an enormous amount of pain and swelling and all that stuff. And I thought, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Luckily, it was my left arm, not my right arm. So the right arm was getting stronger and recovering from surgery. So it was my go-to arm. And then I discovered through physio that my left arm could recover much quicker, because it's the one tendon in your body you don't need. So I picked the right one. And and then, you know, it was a question of learning how to maneuver in the studio without continuing to hurt myself. But it did take some wind out of my sails, I have to say.
Well, and you kept rallying, man. You just kept rallying back again. It was pretty impressive. Okay, Jen, last in-person art experience that you've had.
Like in my studio?
No, last in person with other people. Like art opening, art viewing, seeing art in person.
When would I say? So you have to forgive me, my time's kind of blurring.
No, for all of us, it's blurry. I don't think it's just you.
I'm gonna say probably at Wanda's opening for her show at Mortar and Bricks.
Okay. Wanda, which piece of art did you build space for in your almost finished new house?
Oh, well, I do covet one of my own works. I'm not usually like that. It's, you know, it's okay, let's move on but there's one painting that I particularly love, and I'm still waffling about it. And it's one of the sanded off, I call them recovered paintings.
Yeah.
And it's one of the steel ones that is so much about the earth. And it was the first one that I did that I felt, and I struggled with this for, weeks. I left it alone. I went back to it. I scraped it off. I started again. I brought the sander out. I brought the sander away. And finally, it just resolved. And I really, really like it. And so it could sit just about anywhere in my house, and I would be so happy.
You are building space for it.
Absolutely.
Okay, both. Is it hard not to be influenced by your studio mate's style and palette?
I don't think so. I think we like that.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, as I told you, the whole hanging process was around, I try not to be solely based in palette, but I was like, okay, where are the alignments? And there are some very interesting crossovers, and then there's some really advertent not even remotely close. So I wondered if it was advertent, if you were trying very hard to stop, to not do that.
Nope.
No, I don't think so.
Right.
Anyway,
Same.
Okay, Jen, when was the last time you got lost in the woods, and how long did it take you to get home? I love this question.
When was the last time I got lost? Okay, well, Mike and Lexi and I got lost last year on Bald Eagle Mountain.
Oh.
That's now known as Bald Eagle Mountain. And we went, we were pretty close to the summit, and we decided it was too precarious. We were going to turn and actually, we thought we were on one route and we weren't, and there was a couple little paths that took us waylaid. And we ended up going down and down and down, and it was getting really difficult. And we were stuck kind of in a gully to where we were literally crawling to come back up. I think we went an extra 400 meters down. So we did, I don't know, maybe like a 1,400 meter elevation walk, and it wasn't intended to be that way, but I would say that's probably
the closest.
Yeah.
To truly lost.
Kind of scary. And my dog at the time, she never would have gotten tired, and she was so tired that she just literally, like, her paws were on the ground and she went like this into the
oh no.
And she's like, oh my God, you guys. Anyway, we fixed it.
Yeah, you all made it home.
Yeah, we lived to tell the tale.
And Lexi intact, all as well.
Yes.
Wanda, similarly questioned, but this is a little bit more advertent. When was the last time you ran away from home? I always feel like there's a run away from home moment.
Well, you know what? There is. And I ran away from home as an adult, and I did as a child, as a young woman as well.
Did you?
Oh yeah, definitely. But I was only like, I don't know, 14 when I first ran away from home. But the latest one was about, it would be like at least, I don't know, it would have to be 14 or 15 years ago. And I had, I had this thing that I loved to do, which was go with my stepdaughter to Vancouver, rent a hotel room, go to the home show and hang out and go out for dinner. And I would just show up one day in the afternoon at her house and say, do you want to run away? And she would say, definitely.
That's
and we would
brilliant.
hop on the plane and we'd be gone for like 3 or 4 days. It was wonderful.
I love it. That is so brilliant, a moment when you get to do that.
Yes.
Again, are there artists in your family? Anyone?
Yes. But they would probably say no. I have a lot of very creative aunts. My grandfather also used to draw a lot, and I have one aunt that paints a lot, or she used to. I think she's kind of stopped painting, but yeah. And one of my other aunts is also a very good baker, so she does a lot of.
So you got that. So were you ever informed by that? By any of them? Was what you chose in life ever informed by any of those?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, I was always a creative kid, and I was always the kid that if there was something that needed to be colored or anything needed to be painted, I was on it. And I think that just sort of was an innate sense in me. And when we moved to Fort McMurray, it kind of gave me the opportunity to be able to pursue it. And yeah, that's what I like about how things transpired with my sort of trajectory.
Your own path, yeah. Wanda, teaching or doing, which is more gratifying?
You know, I have to say, I don't really make a distinction between those two things. Doing for sure, but doing is also inspired by teaching, and teaching is also inspired by doing. So it's kind of difficult to say which is more gratifying. They're gratifying, both of them, but in totally different ways. And they do feed back and forth for me tremendously. Of course, painting and doing is like, I mean, that is your own kind of area of exploration and discovery. So, I mean, that is very exciting to be able to actually do something like that in your life. And I try to bring that into the teaching, which then I learn a lot from just the people in the classroom, and they're also extremely inspiring. So yeah, so that's how I kind of look at it.
That is both a great answer and a very strong political answer. I love it. I love it. I was hoping that you could answer, both of you, the question of how did you come to the show title, and what, give us a brief overview of it.
No, you. Well, how we came to that, we were wondering what we were going to call it, because we had to come up with a title. And we were throwing around all these ideas, and none of them really sang, because there was this kind of element to our work, and we were trying to even name that, and we weren't being very successful with that naming either. And so one day Jen came in and she said, how they have those shows and there's all those doors, and it's like behind this door and that door. And I said, yeah. And I'm going, where is she going with this?
What's happening here? Yeah.
Well, what about behind door number 7? And there's no reason for the 7. I mean, there just isn't. It's just a perfect title, we felt. And she's the one that brought it home.
Brilliant. And Jen, was the 7 any attachment for you at all?
No. I just like the way it went with behind door number 7 works better than behind door number 8. That's all. It just flowed better.
And does it, now that you've kind of discovered it, does it somehow more inform what ended up happening with the whole show? Was there more connection once you sort of just decided? Was there any alignments that you found after the fact?
I think, I also think that 7, the number 7 comes with a lot of connotations, and the 7 deadly sins and those kind of things. And there seems like there's secrets with 7 more than any other number. So I don't know, I think now it works even more.
Oh yeah, I think it definitely, it sort of mushroomed after that. We started to understand, oh, well, gee, if it's
the alignments,
you don't know what's behind the door. So, it's, wow. Well, abstract painting is sometimes hard to comprehend and visit for the viewer and to make sense of it, or even to make anything of it. And so it's kind of like an invitation to the mystery. Mm-hmm.
That's what I found too. It's like a mystery moment for people.
Yeah.
It'll create some connections that I don't even know if they were intentional, but I think it'll create some amazing connections for people. Okay, Wanda. I'm going to skip over one and go back to Wanda. Jen, what percentage of your work do you scrap?
Probably 30 to 40%.
Okay.
Yep. Scrap.
Wanda? Same question, Wanda.
Well, I would say probably 30%. Scrapping and then recovering. That's the other part. But definitely at least 30%. Not everything, sometimes they just get parked. And to come back to later or whatever. But yeah, at least 30%.
Okay, that's an interesting one too. Okay, name your top 3 critique words when you're in a group of artists. It's a both question. What words do you most use when you're in a group of artists talking about work?
Speaks to.
References. I like the word poetic.
Yeah, definitely.
I would say definitely not interesting. For me, sometimes I like to tackle kind of the formal elements, or I guess when we're talking one-on-one, it's kind of like, what do you think of this beside this? And it's like, oh, no, it's not quite working. It's not quite the right shade. So it's very, I would say, kind of.
I think it starts off to be kind of analytical as a place to even open up the conversation, but it can go anywhere from there to talking about even the physical resonance that a piece can have or a color can have.
Yeah.
You know, so just taking that basic formal language and not being bound to it, but allowing it to like expand and include those other levels of meaning development.
Absolutely, across the board. I was thinking through as you were saying, and it was like, yep, absolutely. The critique portion of it, I know, is so important to both of you. Process. And the critique has become such a big part of it that I was just interested to know if there's sort of formalized, if there's a formalized tone to that, and if there's kind of things that you go back to over and over and over again. And this is an interesting one to both of you. Have you ever stood poised in front of the other person's painting and desperately wanted to make a mark on the other person's piece?
We should get after it.
Should.
We talked about it.
We talked about doing a joint piece, but I have to say I've never felt like making a mark on her piece. Just
Never?
No.
No, and I think that my marks would just be way too wiggly on, you know, just, yeah, no, it's like the mark making is so specific to each of us that I've never thought, oh, well, I could go in there and mess that up a bit. Or she's never said, well, I could go in there and straighten that up a bit. So no, that's never happened. No.
So if any of these questions are getting exhausting, I'm actually like thinking through the process of creating a whole show in the same space. And it's like, what strikes me? And that's one of those things.
Oh, I think it's interesting.
Jen, was there another career path prior to ours?
I was kind of very into health. I actually started in nursing.
Oh.
And then I switched into science because nursing at the time, like when I went and did the clinical, and I think maybe it's much better now, but at the time, the way that the nurses were treated by the doctors, I was like, this is
not going to live through that, no.
And so, but I did get to watch some cool operations, which was, I mean, I actually like human blood and stuff, tissues, and I'm also go to fix like scrapes and things.
And so were you in an emergency room, or were you in surgery, or was there a
I was in surgery, but kind of as an observer. It's the first year university nursing program.
Yeah, the beginnings.
And then I switched into science, and then I got pregnant with my daughter. And so things sort of went on hold for a bit. And from there, I worked at I waitressed and bartended for many years, and then managed a health food store. And so it's kind of sort of not on a path to nowhere, but just sort of, kind of living.
Trying to figure it out. Yeah.
Yes. And then, and while my husband was in school, I was doing kind of like the night shifts and all that. And then when he graduated and started his career, and I was at the health food store, which I loved, was one of my most favorite jobs. And then from there, I was able to pursue art once we moved to Fort McMurray. So it was kind of one of those things where I always felt like I was going to get there at some point.
Yeah.
But just not quite sure. It wasn't quite linear.
Yeah, it sounds like that. A circuitous route, but you got there, and it's been that since.
Yeah.
But Wanda, the building a house thing is so predominant. We didn't talk about this in your last Zoom meeting because we were so focused on other things.
Right.
And so here's the question: is becoming the designer for your own home more arduous than designing and creating a whole exhibition? Interested in how much energy you've been able to put to both, and I've been awed by it. So interested to know which is more taxing right now.
I think the house building is definitely more taxing, and it has to do with, the number of relationships you have to deal with just to get like the paint on the wall, right? And just to get from A to B, and in our culture right now, in the building culture here in Canmore, it's ridiculous. Luckily, my husband has 35 years in the construction industry. So, you know, he's handling most of the scheduling, but there's glitches every day, and we're there every day.
I know.
Yeah.
And
So
it's physically taxing as well as mentally. So I've been just awed by how much you've been able to do this last.
Well, we keep trying to get a day off, but every time I have a day off, I just want to go to the studio. So I don't know what a day off
I
is.
was going to say it's a different kind of day off.
That's right.
Jen, are your kids artistic? Did children take that up?
Yeah, so my daughter just finished her master's in classics.
Oh.
So she's like into writing and literature and that kind of thing. But she also, when she's here, she'll come to the studio with me and do some prints. And she will take classes like at Arts Place if she's here for an extended period of time. And you know, she does a lot of drawing. She's got her own easel and that kind of thing at home too. So yeah.
So it's a path for sure.
Yeah.
And Wanda, I'm interested to know, because you and I have had a lot of chats about this. How have you changed through this kind of last 18 months of forced resilience? We're stuck in forced resilience the last 18 months. How have you changed as a person as you go back into the next phase?
Oh, you know, that's an interesting question because, you know, in life, most of the time, I'm quite a speedy person. And so I rip along at a great rate.
Yeah.
And I don't have, I sometimes don't take enough time to just reflect on actually what's going on inside me.
Right.
And when this happened, the whole COVID and the isolation and, you know, and being able to maintain some equilibrium through it all in all my relationships, it sort of threw me back to a time when I spent a long time by myself, completely alone for 6 months at the fire lookout. And I did that for 4 summers, which clued me into how to be with myself.
Right.
And I hadn't really had to deal with that since then until this time. And one of the things that came really to the forefront was these ideas that were sort of, I don't know, demonstrated by the community. Like just Jen and I talk about this too, the generosity of community.
For sure.
And how that really helps to develop, you know, loving kindness and thoughtfulness. And COVID offered me time anyway to reflect on some of that and to catch my breath.
But also we do a lot of raging.
Yeah, we do that.
Good. I was like, it can't all be that positive.
No, it isn't. No. But I think it slowed me down a little bit for sure.
Tell me about what was the most pivotal art experience that defined your aesthetic? Like discovering a certain artist, walking into a certain gallery.
Let's see here. Well, I don't know. There's so many brilliant artists, and I feel like, you know, I don't want to single anybody out. I would say really like Mark Dicey's work.
Yeah. Did you see it in person somewhere for the first time, or was it an online discovery?
Mostly online. I've seen some of his pieces. I'd like to actually see. I think he's got a show up.
He does,
but I haven't been able to make it to the show. So yeah, and then Katie Owie, her work, I mean, it's beyond brilliant, and I just like seeing her work is almost like a religious experience
for me as well. So you saw in person the show at yeah, it was truly a religious experience. Both you touched on it earlier, but why complete abstraction? Why has there ever been a temptation to kind of reference more clearly?
Yeah, and I think so when I do like my strict printmaking work on paper, I really like to go black and white. I love like that, just going right back to the basics and the texture and the paper. And so when I'm doing that, sometimes I will have like referential details in there.
Yeah.
But still, I'm very attracted to patterns. And so a lot of my work ends up having a lot of patterns. And for this body of work, and actually really since, I would say since 2016, and the election of Donald Trump, and when it felt like the world was going to shit, I just felt like I needed color. And so from there, I just started doing color.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was the pivotal turning point. It definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
Wanda,
Yeah.
any temptation to kind of ever head back to
Representation, figuration.
Yeah.
You know, I find some of my pieces for me have they're quite, I wouldn't say figurative, but they reference nature so predominantly that it's for me almost representation. But the other thing that really interests me is the human body and the human experience. And not that I would like to be a portrait painter or anything, because I wouldn't, but I'm fascinated by how the body operates as a kind of codex for memory, and how we accumulate experience and how it shows on our body. So figure drawing to me is a, you know, if I was to sort of, and I've been considering doing a painting, figurative painting, but not to the point to make it highly representational, but just to sort of reach deeper into those thoughts that I'm thinking about being human.
Absolutely. Beautiful. We're winding it up. We're kind of coming to that time now. So Wanda, are you able to recognize the moment that an idea just doesn't measure up to your vision for it? Or do you step over the edge and see it once it's done?
Am I able to oh, so do I know when I put a color down, it's definitely the wrong color? Or do I leave it and go forward?
You know,
and say, does this work?
Yeah. Did you know when a piece is just kind of headed in a direction that wasn't what you envisioned?
Yeah, I absolutely do. Yeah.
Do you stop or do you push forward and just watch it go over the edge first before you give up?
I definitely take things over the edge because I know that in my back pocket, I have an orbital sander. There's always a way out.
So is that done with the hope that maybe it's going to change? Maybe that something is going to shift and it's going to become?
Well, there's some basic fundamental things. And if I get them wrong in the beginning, they're probably going to be wrong at the end. And there's two, actually. And they're formal elements, composition and value. And those two things for me, if they're not working in the beginning, the more farther I go, the weirder it gets. And so at that point, there's no problem with taking it over the edge. I mean, maybe there's going to be a miracle, you never know, but usually it's the sander after that.
So it's the need though to take it past there and keep going.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting. And you know, and it's fearful too. I mean, you know, somebody asked me once, like, oh, do you enjoy like your studio? I said, I'm terrified in the studio. Sometimes I'm absolutely terrified, but it's that kind of terror that that I obviously am sick enough to love. So
well, and it's not sickness. It's
no,
truly, it's the imminent, the constant hopefulness of an artist practice.
That's exactly it. That's well said. Constant hopefulness. Yeah.
And it feels like that. Okay, wind up question, and it's the big philosophical kind of COVID-y question. Do you think that you'll go back to belonging? After now once we're here and we've been isolated and we've done as our best to stay belonging, do you think it's going to go back to belonging the way it was, or is it going to be different, and how?
I feel like we're all we've all been through this together, and we're all sort of moving at these weird kind of fluid momentum that at some point the puzzles are going to work their way back together. Yeah. We're gonna weave back into how to belong again. And I mean, I feel like I never sort of shifted out of belonging, but it's like you step back and you get sort of this bird's eye view of where things are, or what things are happening. And I don't know.
That bird's eye view change how you go forward?
Yeah, you know, I think definitely, like, I'm very kind of sensitive about where I go and the spaces that I enter, and I'm still wearing my mask in the grocery store, and I still am fearful of, like, you know, the Delta variant and that kind of thing but I feel like it didn't shift my sense of belonging.
That's great. Like, again, I question these things just knowing the both of you and how much belonging has been a part of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just interested to know, do you think there's just a snap back to normal, or is it a new belonging?
I think it's new because I think we've all been through this crazy thing. And but also, like, I feel like in a, you know, technology is kind of our friend and foe. It's kind of like, you know, if we wouldn't have had technology, I wouldn't have been able to have a 3-hour baking session with my daughter over Zoom or FaceTime over Christmas, and, you know, make scrolling together and that kind of thing. And so
Yeah.
I think, you know, that kind of thing still helps you stay connected.
Yep, it has kept us all connected. Thank you. You made it through the 35 questions. It's a bumpy ride, ladies. It's a bumpy ride. So I'm grateful you stayed with it. And I just wanted to just give everybody a brief introduction to the show so they can ask some questions. So Behind Door Number 7 is opening on Saturday, live and in person. We'll all be here. Jen and Wanda will be kind of intermittently painting out front of the gallery on the live art stage from 10 in the morning till 2, and then they're going to quickly change clothes and run upstairs and be part of their own opening in the afternoon from 2 to 5. So I wanted to be sure that everybody, if you can come in person, please do. We'll make it as safe and easy an environment as it can possibly be, but to share the opportunity to see the work in person, to share a glass of wine, to actually talk face to face will be huge in the next phase. We've done 1 or 2 like that, and it's pretty heartening, I got to tell you. So it would be lovely if you all joined us. I'm starting to hang the show. I'm excited to see the alignments and the not alignments. I'm excited to see the work has just kind of burgeoned from, you know, from a con to this incredibly beautiful piece. So just take my word for it, come. I'm going to show you a couple of short process films. I'm going to start from scratch. This is Jen in studio. So I'm just going to play a couple of films and then we'll go to the questions. Oops, no, I'm not gonna. This is what I get for not having a co-host tonight. And that was it, the finished piece, Swipe Right by Jen d'Entremont. So I wanted to at least give you a brief overview of how printmaking plays into these works. You know, when you see them in person, it will change the way that you view the entire show when you've seen the process. And then Wanda, brief process as well, just seeing how she passes through. What happened to this one? Nope. Funny thing, this one's not playing. I'm going to go through to the next one, Where the Weather Runs Deep by Wanda Ellerbeck. And we saw a lot of process videos in her last Zoom cocktails. So I'll trust that you'll see those on our preview lounge on the website as well. We've got 4 or 5 process videos from each artist on the preview lounge under the exhibition. So well worth a look. and then just a lot of imagery of what is going to be in the exhibition. And I just wanted to skip through so you could really see how this body of work has evolved. So this is a nice kind of look. And I pulled these two because there was just this funny relationship that I didn't expect until I saw them. And until I saw them both in person, and then seeing the relationship between the two of them, wanted to bring that together for everybody on screen. It was really an interesting one. So you can bet that in the exhibition hanging, there'll be some alignment, or I'll try to at least put them in sight lines so everybody can see if it's just me that sees that alignment. And then a few in situ photos so you can see scale and understand how the pieces look in reality. And then I'm going to open up questions. So we've moved on to questions for the artist. Please feel free. It's not moderated in any way, so go at it. Anybody have a question?
I have a question, and it's kind of for both of you. So it's Don McIntyre. I'm wondering, because at some point you said, I forget how the question was worded, but not quite working, not quite right shade. You were talking about sort of where you felt like when you were in the space together. And I have sort of two. Did you do this for the show where you looked as you were sitting together and say, that's not quite working? Like, as we're trying, as we're looking behind door number 7, that's not quite working there. And then as a second question, at any point, and this is partially because I've seen the show on the floor, not on the wall yet. At any point, was there any time when you sort of went, here's a color, and we're both going to use this color kind of as a starting point?
No. So the first question seems to me that did the fact that we had this show coming up together and we had this title, did we look at each other's work and critique it in light of those two elements? And no, we didn't. Our work was our work, and both of us had a fairly well-developed body of work at that time. And yet we felt, because we shared so many conceptual ideas together and the physical space together, that there would be some alignment that would emerge. So we didn't try and build a show that pertains specifically to this title and this sort of behind door number 7. That seemed to just cover both of our processes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we both kept the mystery.
Yeah, we both kept the mystery. Sometimes I don't even know. Like, I look at I don't know, and then I have to ask Jen, what do you think this is? And she does the same thing. She says, oh, I don't know about this. So there's always that dialogue and mystery. Yeah, always.
Did you choose to specifically paint at the same time, anytime throughout the show, to try to kind of build alignments, or was it just whatever happened?
Well, it was kind of whatever happened. Like, we didn't want to be matchy.
Right.
And we didn't want we didn't want to blend our aesthetics.
Right.
So we wanted to keep our aesthetics to our own.
Yeah.
And we knew that we both wanted to keep a very kind of abstract, even an abstract thought process.
Right.
Going through the
whole process. Yeah, for sure. And so did that mean painting at different times?
No. Oftentimes we are there together. We just end up there together. Like, I'll come and she'll be there, or she'll come and I'll be there, and we just kind of work in the same space together. And through that space, it's a constant conversation back and forth of like, oh, how is this going? And, I was thinking of doing this here, over here, and what do you think? And it'd be like, yeah, no, that kind of thing.
Right.
But also, I'd like to add that sometimes, you know, I'd say Jen had been away or something, and I've been working by myself for 3 or 4 days, or maybe longer, and I know she's coming back, and I have like 1,000 questions for her, and I can't wait for her to get to the studio. She doesn't even get up the stairs before she gets the first question. But it's because I appreciate so much her insight and that whole conversation that we have that's ongoing. It's so valuable.
Fantastic. It's very inspiring to have seen you work in that way, because a lot of times too, it's just so planned and contrived to try to build an exhibition together. So it's really heartening to know process how you worked through it as a both as individuals and as a team in so many ways. And that, you know, it really shows in the work. It really does.
I really love that we learn so much from each other. I've learned tremendous amount from Jen, tremendous. And I'm so forever grateful. It's good.
Same.
Does anybody else have any questions?
I will. Hello, Jan and Wanda.
Hey,
Congratulations. I'm so excited for you guys, and really looking forward to seeing the work together on the wall. So when did you start? When did you decide to do this? When did you guys come up with the idea to do a show together? Or I'm just wondering how long it took to kind of put it all together when you were, you know, building the work.
About 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
6 months.
We knew before Christmas that we were going to do this. We just didn't know what date.
Right.
So that was just a question of planning and scheduling with Cheryl. And but we knew we wanted to do this. So
okay.
Christmas, yeah.
It's wonderful. So Jen, I'm going to focus on you because, of course, Wanda got my questions last time.
Yeah, Wanda had a few questions.
I've taken a printmaking class from Jen, and it was just amazing. So it was really wonderful to see your video, because now a lot of the questions I had about your work have been answered, because I've never watched you work actually in the studio. So, but I do, I'd love it if you could talk a little bit more about your inspiration, because I know you talked about nature and the details of nature, but I can't help but see baking. So could you a little bit more about your inspiration?
Oh, you're seeing baking. Oh, that's so great.
I see donuts. And I don't know, fluffy, beautiful things. So can you talk a little bit more about it?
What sort of, how my process works really is I start with color. And I kind of get sort of an idea of a color palette that I want. And from there, I should say, I start with my background. I put the panel on the floor, and I start with my background, which becomes very sort of wishy-washy and atmospheric. And I'm doing a lot of sort of mark making in the background with different like wood pieces and marking with like wood and meat syringes and that kind of thing. And then sometimes I'll even silk screen in the background. So I'll make some kind of wishy-washy marks, and I'll shoot them on the silk screen, and then I will use those in the background layer. And once I kind of get that atmospheric background layer, then I can decide what I want for shapes on top and start building there. And sometimes it's just kind of, I start with just one color, one shape, and that sets the stage for what comes next. And and then it just goes from there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I encourage anybody who wants to see a bit of process happening too, to kind of skirt down to the gallery earlier on Saturday to watch Jen work outside, because as with Barb last week, it was really enlightening to see process in action. And outside, at least you can distance, you can be part of and not at the same time. And hopefully the artists are feeling at ease in that strange environment, but it's definitely very telling. So if you get a chance, come down and see.
I have some questions and comments.
Indeed. Ask as.
Well, first I want to welcome Jen to Elevation Gallery's roster and Barb, but it's not about you, Barb. It's about Jen and Wanda tonight.
I'm welcoming everyone.
Yeah, I'm so excited that that you're in, Jen. I love your work, and so is Wanda. But I already said that to Wanda when she joined. So yeah, so I'm very excited. I keep looking for your work. Sorry.
I'm excited too.
Yay! And I had a question, but you answered it. I wanted to know how much of an influence you girls had on each other, but I think you just perfectly described it before Barb's question. And on Saturday, Jen, are you going to have your silk screen with you?
I would like to. It's just kind of figuring out how I can clean it.
Yeah.
If I don't clean it right away, then
Yeah.
I'm left with a ruined silk screen. So that's my own.
Yeah.
We can try to figure that one out, Jen.
Yeah.
Let me know if we can provide some way to do that.
Yeah.
Because you can't let it dry out because it'll ruin it, right? So you have to definitely be on that, right?
Right away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had a one last question. So again, I'm sorry, Wanda. I love you to bits, you know that, and I love your work. But I have a question for Jen.
Ask Jen all the questions. I'm fine with it.
You can have a break for once. So Jen, your work, you have all these definite shapes, and silkscreen, in my understanding, is a way of it's a artistic way of reproducing an image many times. And we saw in your video that you're doing the polka dots, but sometimes it's just the one shape that's like in the foreground. Are these silk screen? And my question is, if they are silk screen, why don't you paint them?
You do. I do sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah. I do. And I don't know, when I use the silk screen, sometimes it's just because I want the flatness of silk screen as opposed to having the brush marks.
Yeah.
And so I mean, sometimes I will tape out a shape and I'll end up using a blank silk screen, one that does not even have a covering on it, and I will
fill it.
Yeah, fill that.
Yeah, I always thought you were using stencils, but that's just my world.
I kind of make stencils. I use stencils kind of of tape and various things.
Yeah, and I learned that from her. Yes.
Yeah,
it's been very helpful.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Anybody else have questions? I don't see anybody else. I'm thrilled everybody hung in. It's 5 after 7 after 8. So if there's no other questions, we'll wind it up. This piece is recorded, Wanda. I made sure this time, and it's going to go up on our YouTube channel tomorrow.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So anybody who didn't catch it can catch it then.
Great. Perfect.
Yeah, it'll Courtney will get it up first thing in the morning, and we'll make sure that we promote it as well, so everybody who is kind of not going to be able to make the show itself will be able to see it.
Fantastic. Thank you for all of that, Cheryl.
I really enjoyed this one. Thank you, you guys. This was great.
Really good. Yeah, and
thanks
thanks everybody for coming. It's always great to have people ask questions and just let us see your faces, and the interaction is fantastic. And I'm so looking forward to seeing people in real time and real space.
That's the thing. We're at the real time stage now. It'll be great to have you all together in real time again.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Congratulations, both
Thanks
of you
so
guys.
much.
You're
Bye.
awesome.
Okay.
Bye.
Well, we've got thanks. Oh, lots of thankses in the chat. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.